Hey everyone, I am absolutely thrilled you're here. Today, we're diving deep into the hidden psychological mechanics behind some of our absolute most frustrating communication struggles. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling utterly exhausted, totally misunderstood, or just, completely overwhelmed, you are definitely in the right place. In this explainer, we're going to visually map out exactly what's going on in our brains and bodies when social interactions go sideways. So let me ask you something. Have you ever felt literally suffocated by just a few seconds of silence? I want you to really think about that for a second. That moment the conversation stops, the air gets super heavy, and suddenly your brain just goes into absolute overdrive. Or, hey, what about lying in bed at 2 a.m., endlessly looping a single conversation in your head, basically torturing yourself over something you said hours ago? Let's be real, we all have these universally relatable pain points. But the incredible thing we're going to explore today is that the reasons we experience them can be vastly different from person to person. I absolutely love this quote from our source material. It says, "The feeling of not understanding isn't proof of inferiority, but proof of having a different map." Wow, that right there brilliantly illustrates our core thesis today. The struggles you have in conversations aren't character flaws, guys. You aren't bad at socializing. You're simply reacting based on how your specific brain is wired, whether that's due to innate processing traits or past experiences. You just have a different map. And today, we're going to learn how to read it. Section 1, the fear of silence. Two different roots. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we can have two completely different internal experiences that look exactly the same from the outside. On one hand, we have the information processing gap, which is often seen in individuals with innate neurodivergent traits, like ASD. For them, a conversation is just data. When silence hits, there are no cues. They aren't avoiding the other person, they're literally freezing because they're actively searching for the right data to process and respond. It's like a blank computer screen. But on the other hand, we have something entirely different, a trauma-based response, often seen in adult children who grew up in tense environments. For them, silence isn't a lack of data, it's a threat. If a parent's silence used to mean an impending explosion of anger or punishment, their body reacts physically. Their heart races, palms sweat, and they are gripped by the fear of being rejected. So it's the exact same silence, but with two totally different root causes. Section 2, words that won't stop. Overtalking and questioning. Okay. So let's shift gears to the exact opposite reaction to silence. What happens when the words just won't stop? In some cases, overtalking can come from a pure, albeit sometimes overwhelming, desire to share a passion. We call this the info dump. The speaker gets so deeply immersed in their favorite topic that their brain simply doesn't register the listener checking their watch or looking away. It's an innocent desire to share their world, even if you weren't quite prepared for a 45-minute masterclass on medieval agriculture. Conversely, we have filling the void, which is a high-tension defense mechanism. This person is terrified of the silence we just talked about. If they stop talking, they fear the other person will leave or get upset. So what do? They fill every single second with words. They're constantly self-monitoring, internally terrified, yet they just can't hit the brakes. And, this brilliantly illustrates how questioning works, too. If someone is bombarding you with questions, it might just be someone executing a learned rule. They've intellectually learned that, hey, asking questions sustains a conversation. So they logically execute that rule, sometimes turning a totally casual chat into what feels like a rapid-fire police interrogation, but it's completely out of intellectual curiosity. But look at the flip side, deflecting the spotlight. This person is asking questions out of a desperate need to avoid personal criticism. If the spotlight is on you, well, they can't be judged, criticized, or rejected, right? They give you the floor to protect themselves. From the outside, both look like an interrogator, but one is following a rule and the other is holding up a shield. Section 3. The post-conversation spiral. 2 a.m. Rumination. So the conversation ends. But for a lot of us, it really doesn't, does it? Why are we staring at the ceiling, rethinking everything instead of actually sleeping? Well, for some, it's the solving a mystery path. This is a purely logical drive. The brain recognizes that the conversation was clunky, and it's searching for the missing puzzle pieces in the data. Why did they make that face? What did I miss? It's not self-hatred. It's an unsolved equation that the brain refuses to close until it makes sense. But then we have the self-denial loop. This is a brutal emotional spiral. Instead of analyzing data, the brain goes straight to, I'm unlovable, they hate me, I ruined it. This triggers old, deep abandonment wounds from childhood. It's not a mystery to solve. It's a court case where you're the judge, the jury, and you are always found guilty. Recognizing which one of these you do is a massive step towards peace. Section 4. delayed processing, and anger, the time slip. Okay, let's dive into this, because this next concept from our source material absolutely blew my mind. We are looking at the fascinating neurological concept of the time slip and exactly why intense emotions, specifically anger, often hit us hours after the actual event took place. Let's walk through this chronological overload process together. Step 1. Record data in real time. For some people, simply listening, formulating a response, and maintaining posture takes up 100% of their brain's processing capacity, so they literally can't decode the other person's microexpressions or tone in the moment. They just record them. Step 2. Analyze expressions in isolation. Hours later, when they're finally alone in a quiet room, their brain has the bandwidth to play back the recording. And that leads to Step 3. Delayed emotional response. They realize, wait a minute, that tone was condescending. That smile was actually a smirk. And suddenly, the anger hits them like a freight train, hours after the fact. The absolute crucial point here is this. The brain acts as a recording device during conversations and does the decoding later in isolation. This is just so incredibly validating. If you get mad about a conversation hours later, it does not mean you have a grudge-holding personality. It just means your brain has a processing queue, and that emotional data just finally reached the front of the line. Section 5. Trait versus trauma. Defensive strategies. So as we process all this overwhelming data and all these past wounds, our minds naturally construct defenses to keep us safe. When the brain gets overwhelmed, it kicks straight into survival mode, and it usually picks one of two directions. First is inner-directed, or intropunitive. This is where you immediately blame yourself. I ruined it, I'm awful. The subconscious goal here is just to keep the peace. Because hey, if it's your fault, you can fix it, and the other person won't abandon you. The second is outer-directed, or extrapunitive. This is blaming others. They're so unreasonable, they are the problem. This happens when a person's ego is so incredibly fragile from past wounds that admitting fault would literally cause them to emotionally collapse. Now, we're just impartially reporting on this here. There is no good or bad defense. Both are perfectly valid survival tactics that share the exact same root, a deep, terrifying fear of rejection and being unloved. Section 6. Finding your own map, from blame to understanding. We've covered a ton of ground today, and it is time to shift our perspective away from self-judgment and toward a profound healing self-awareness. Know your map. This is the ultimate goal of our explainer today. It's the practice of observing your behavioral motives, whether they're an innate processing trait or a learned trauma response, completely without judgment, so you can find tailored coping strategies. The goal here isn't to flawlessly fix your behavior so you never have an awkward pause again. Let's be real, that's impossible. The goal is to gently recognize the underlying engine driving your reactions. Are you freezing up because your brain needs more data or because you're terrified of being yelled at? Once you know your map, you can finally navigate your life and your relationships with genuine self-compassion. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Next time you stumble in a conversation, next time there's an awkward silence or you talk way too much or you're lying awake at 2 a.m., will you judge yourself or will you get curious about your map? By choosing curiosity over shame, you open the door to true connection, both with others and, most importantly, with yourself. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep exploring, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.